Hey, welcome back to the Spot for Fantasy Footballers. I'm Asa Rehman. Well, if you watched last week's video, you would have seen me hyping Chris Wood of Burnley. And if you had him in your lineup, you would have enjoyed his 20-point performance. Good for you. Well, we'll discover who the next big fantasy player is for Gameweek 34. We'll be talking about the top fantasy players for each of the 10 fixtures, and I'll be revealing my Waiver 11 for Gameweek 34. And please subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already for all your fantasy draft needs. Give this video a like as well if you're enjoying it. It is the spot for fantasy footballers, especially those in fantasy draft leagues. All right, before we get to the Waiver 11 for Game Week 34, I'll be talking about the top fantasy players in each of the 10 fixtures in Game Week 34, and I'll be using a 4-game average as the form rating instead of what the FPL site uses, which is a 30-day average. For all matches played in the past 30 days, I believe the 4-game average is just more consistent. First match, we're looking at Southampton hosting Leicester City. Stuart Armstrong, the most consistent asset, averaging 3.25 in his last 4. I say that because Danny Ings is out. He might miss the rest of the season, so it's a good time to pick up Shea Adams if you can. He's averaging 3 points in his last 4 matches, 7 goals so far this season, and he'll be looking to add to that total for the rest of the campaign. For Leicester City, no surprise here, Kelechi Iheanacho averaging 8.25 in his last 4 matches. And then this one might be a little surprising to some. Timothy Castagna, a great asset to pick up right now, averaging 5.5 in his last 4 matches, and one that I really like going forward, even if Ricardo Pereira does return to the lineup for Leicester City. Moving on then, Crystal Palace hosting Manchester City. A one-sided affair, of course, but Wilfried Zaha and Christian Benteke for Crystal Palace have been pretty consistent so far this season when Zaha is in the lineup, I should say. 4.25 for Zaha in his last 4, 3.5 for Christian Benteke. And then for Manchester City, always so tricky to figure out who Pep is going to play, but Bernardo Silva has been very good recently, 5 points in his last 4. Phil Foden averaging 2.75, but I expect to see him step on the field a little bit more as Manchester City shifts their focus to Champions League play. Brighton versus Leeds United. Robert Sanchez, the goalkeeper for Brighton, averaging 4.75 in his last 4. And Lewis Dunk coming off a clean sheet as well, averaging 4.25. And then for Leeds United, I'm going to mention 2 defensive players, but they have the opportunity to score offensively as well, especially Stuart Dallas averaging 6.5 in his last 4. Diego Llorente averaging 5.25 in that same span. Now to Chelsea versus Fulham. Christian Pulisic is Chelsea's best attacking option right now, but he may be rested in this match. We'll wait and see what happens there. 6.75 in his last 4. Mason Mount always playing, but he might be rested as well. 4.5 in his last 4. As for Fulham, Josh Maja, someone you can rely upon once again. He scored in his last match. I expect him to start and get significant playing time against Chelsea. 2.75 in his last 4. Mario Lemina might be a player to pick up, or at least keep an eye on. 2.5 in his last 4 matches. As for Everton and Aston Villa, Seamus Coleman, mentioned him before. I'm going to mention him again, averaging 7 points in his last 4 matches. James Rodriguez, my favorite attacking option for Everton. Gylfi Sigurdsson, obviously decent as well, but James Rodriguez, 5.75 in his last 4. And Ollie Watkins continuing to produce, even with Jack Grealish out of the lineup. 6.25 for Ollie Watkins in his last 4 matches. John McGinn's been picking up the slack a little bit, averaging 4 points in his last 4. Now to Newcastle and Arsenal. Alan St-Maximin averaging 5.25. I've been hyping him all season long. And worth noting here as well, Joe Willock not able to play against his parent club, so he won't be in the lineup. Joelinton is the other Newcastle player I'm going to mention here, then 4.25 in his last 4. As for the Arsenal assets, it's been tough in recent weeks. Danny Ceballos, mentioned him last week. Going to mention him again here, 4.5 in his last 4. Nicolas Pepe averaging 3, but tough to know who Mikel Arteta is going to be playing in this match. Now to Manchester United and Liverpool, the marquee matchup of the weekend. Mason Greenwood averaging 8.75 in his last 4, but United held off the score sheet last week. We'll see if they can score against Liverpool this week. Marcus Rashford averaging 5 in his last 4. Bruno Fernandes has been very quiet recently. As for Liverpool, Trent Alexander-Arnold really picking up in the second half of the season, averaging 8.25, I should say, in his last 4. And Mohamed Salah, decent return from him recently, 6.25 in his last 4. Tottenham versus Sheffield United. Let's stick to the 2 main men for Tottenham, Harry Kane and Son Heung-min. Kane averaging 6.75. Son averaging 5 in his last 4 matches. Ben Osborne for Sheffield United averaging 4.25. And David McGoldrick, the return of McGoldrick, he scored last week, and he's averaging 3.25 in his last 4. West Brom versus Wolves. Matheus Pereira, another one, been red hot in the second half of the season, really, averaging 10.5 in his last 4. Callum Robinson, pretty good in decent weeks as well, 5.5. But Pereira's the one you want for West Brom. He scored in the last match, and he just keeps scoring. He's probably going to get to 10 goals this year. I think he's sitting at 9 heading into this game week. Adama Traore, 5.25 in his last 4. Leander Dendoncker. Wolves are just really tough right now to really know who's going to contribute there, coming off a really poor performance last week. So Dendoncker is the second one I'm mentioning here, but I'm not really endorsing him either. 4.25 in his last 4. And finally, Burnley hosting West Ham. Chris Wood, hyping this guy all week and loving him again going into this one, averaging 9.25 going into this game, and averaging that in his last 4 matches. And coming off a 3-goal, 1-assist performance. It was a 20-pointer, and if you had him in your lineup, good for you. Congratulations. Ashley Westwood, the other goal scorer in that 4-0 victory, averaging 4.5 in his last 4. As for West Ham, Jesse Lingard averaging 8.75 and coming off a 2, the lowest score he's recorded since joining West Ham in all the matches that he's played, taking out that Manchester United game where he was unavailable, obviously, against his parent club. So, yeah, it's the first time he scored 2 since joining West Ham. Remarkable. And the other player who's been good for West Ham recently, Jared Bowen, averaging 6.25 in his last 4 matches. Well, it's a slightly shorter show this week. I won't be doing the Would You Rather segment, but I know everyone loves the Waiver 11, so I will keep that in. We're going to get to it in a moment. If you have any lineup questions, let me know what they are in the comments below, or hit me up on Twitter at TheSpot4FF or at Asa Rehman, and we can continue the conversation there. All right, let's get to the Waiver 11 for Game Week 34. No surprise to see who my starting keeper is. Once again, old reliable captain Aaron Ramsdale for the Waiver 11 team. He's been there, and he's coming off a clean sheet. So he did well for me last week on this Waiver 11 team. Aaron Ramsdale getting the start once again. Defenders, first one taken is Diego Llorente of Leeds, coming off a clean sheet as well, and a tough one against Manchester United. Did not expect that, but he gets the results, and I'm hoping he can build off of that. The next one I'm taking is Ben Godfrey of Everton. He's been in this lineup, or in and out of the Waiver 11 lineup throughout the season. So I'm picking him here. He's available, taking him. The next one I'm taking is Kurt Zouma. Had him last week. Didn't work out for me because he didn't play. But you know what? Kurt Zouma is a player that if he does play, I like his chances of getting a clean sheet. If he doesn't play, that just means someone from my bench is moving in. And same goes for the next one that I'm taking. The last defender in the starting 11, Kyle Walker for Manchester City. If he plays, I like his chances of getting a clean sheet. If he doesn't, just means someone's coming up from the bench. So something to consider when you're looking at defenders. If you're looking for someone, not bad to take a flyer on one of those guys, Kurt Zouma or Kyle Walker. Not the same for some of the outfield players for both of those teams, Chelsea and Manchester City. Pep roulette, they call it. Same can be said for Tuchel right now at Chelsea. That being said, though, the first midfielder I'm taking is Bernardo Silva. He's been fire. He's available on waivers in this fantasy draft league, so he's in the Waiver 11 lineup. And if he plays, man, he's been so good recently. I like his chances to do something offensive. Dwight McNeil is the next one I'm taking. Burnley coming off that 4-goal win. Dwight McNeil getting an assist in that game, but going forward, I do like what he brings to the table. Anwar El Ghazi coming off a goal as well. So some players that are feeling hot right now in this Waiver 11, and El Ghazi should be seeing more playing time as well with his club. And finally, Hakim Ziyech was in the team last week. Did not come through for me either, but I'm going back to it because if he plays, I like his chances to get an assist or a goal in his upcoming match. Now to the forwards, Josh Maja available, and I'm taking him as the first to forward. He's coming off a goal, so good for him, and hopefully good for the Waiver 11 side as well. And then Joe Linton, usually in this lineup, usually available on waivers, so that's why I'm taking him. And he does play for Newcastle. It's a game that they need. They need all their games going forward, and a chance for him to maybe get a goal in that one. On the bench, the keeper, once again, Bailey Peacock Farrell, for no other reason than good luck. Best name in the game, so we'll try it once again. And then Fabio Silva, Ashley Westwood, and Darnell Furlong round out the Waiver 11 for Game Week 34. Well, I hope that helps. That wraps up another Game Week preview show. A big shout out to all the people who continually watch these shows. Thank you for your continued support. If you have any questions, let me know in the comments below. If there's anything you'd like to see in future videos, let me know in the comments or hit me up on Twitter at TheSpot4FF or at Asa Rehman. Enjoy the rest of your week, your weekends, whatever you're up to. Do it safely. Thanks so much for hanging out at The Spot.